we better crack on, hadn't we? Because last night, the leaders of the Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems and the SNP, but not Reform UK, which is an interesting one, were all grilled by the public in a BBC election special.
Well, the Prime Minister said he was incredibly angry to learn about Tory figures allegedly betting on the election date.
Sir Ed Davey was taken to task over his handling of the post office scandal.
And Sir Keir Starmer said Jeremy Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
Well, let's have a look back now at the last 24 hours in politics.
Well, like you, I was incredibly angry to learn of these allegations. It's a really serious matter. It's right that they're being investigated properly by the relevant law enforcement authorities, including, as Fiona said, a criminal investigation by the police.
Migration is at record levels at the moment under this government. They've completely lost control. We need to get that number down. We need to get it significantly down. I'm not going to put an arbitrary figure on it, because every single politician who's put a number on it has never met that number.
When Alan Bates wrote to me, I'd been in office about 2 weeks, and I wrote to him and said, no, this is a matter for the post office, we don't govern it, and I'm not going to meet you. He wrote back furious, he did, and then I read his letter and said, well, I better meet him. And I met him in October, as you said, Fiona, and I took all his questions and I asked them to my officials and to the post office. And they gave me a categorical assurance that the points that Mr Bates was making were not true.
When Labour launched their manifesto last week, there were 6 key objectives. Not one of them mentioned legal immigration. Not one of them mentioned the population explosion in this country.
For myself. Well, let's get the thoughts of Spiked Online Deputy Editor Fraser Myles. Morning to you, Fraser.
Good morning.
And what did you make of the election programme last night?
I think it's quite long, quite tedious, but some good moments there. And I think with a lot of these programmes, actually, the audience is the real winner. You know, they ask some really good questions. They put people on the spot. Keir Starmer was put on the spot as his support over Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, it's amazing that he gets asked this question all the time, but he can't provide a satisfactory answer.
No, he's had time to think about it.
He has had a lot of time to think about it. He's had a lot of practice. And he couldn't... basically, it was put to him this quote that he said that Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister. So essentially, you know, before he'd been saying, I think, fair enough, that, you know, well, I campaigned for whoever was the Labour leader. Then it was put to him, you said specifically who would be a great Prime Minister, and he really, really struggled to answer it, and eventually came up with this sort of formulation that he would have been better than Boris Johnson, which did not convince the audience at all. Sunak was put on the spot immediately about this betting scandal, which I'm sure we'll go into a bit later. Even Ed Davey was put on the spot over his role in the post office scandal, and one of the questions I liked from the audience was about his horseplay. You know, you're not taking politics seriously by doing all these pratfalls, falling into lakes, going on roller coasters, spending the day at Thorpe Park. Again, he had a bit of a lame answer. He tried to say that, well, the reason I was water paddling was to highlight the sewage scandal. And then, why were you on a roller coaster? He said, well, because politics is a bit of a roller coaster, leading to huge groans, understandably, from the audience.
Yeah. I tell you what, I was very disappointed in. Was when you look at who was on there, the sort of 3 main Westminster parties, if you like, you view it in that sense, plus the SNP. But with what is happening at the moment, surely Reform UK should have had a voice on that.
You would have thought so. You'd think that they would be responding to the polling, as you say, what is happening out there in the campaign, and especially if the leader of the SNP is there. You know, someone for whom 90% of people in the country can't even vote for. Even if you loved him, you couldn't vote for him. Not that that's likely. And it was quite telling, actually. You know, most of the people asking questions were clearly English. You know, that was the majority of the audience. So, yeah, I think people have been sold short a little bit there. I mean, Nigel Farage is on a Question Time special next week with Carla Denyer, the Green Party leader. But they're in a different league, quite frankly. You know, there's even the possibility, some polls putting Reform neck and neck with the Tories. I think it seems absurd that, you know, the mainstream media have not really caught up with what is going on in the campaign and the mood in the country.
Can you tell us about the latest in this betting scandal? The Eye saying this morning that it threatens to derail the Tory campaign.
Wow, as if the Tory campaign were not derailed enough. I mean, we were probably wondering when the next scandal was going to hit. It's been about 2 weeks since D-Day probably put the election out of reach for Rishi Sunak. Now, we've had the arrest of Rishi Sunak's personal protection officer, 3 people closely connected to him in the Tory party, 2 of them Tory candidates, one of them the campaign director for the Conservatives. So they're under investigation.
Who's the husband of one of the candidates?
Who is the husband of one of the candidates? Yeah, so Tony Lee, the husband of Laura Saunders. The other candidate, Craig Williams, is a close aide to Rishi Sunak. And they've been essentially alleged to have been putting on bets, using this kind of insider information to their advantage. This is obviously illegal under the gambling laws. You can't use private information that isn't known to the public to take advantage of bets. And it's just such an absurd and, silly and lurid scandal. I mean, you're talking about Craig Williams is alleged to have put on a £100 bet. We're talking such small amounts of money that, this is the last act of, the last time they get to use their influences. This is how they do it. It just feels like such a fitting epitaph to sort of a very tired and...
I mean, you couldn't in a way, you couldn't make it up. For me, I have to say, if these allegations were found to be true, it's in a way you can't always work out what individual candidates are going to do. But if someone is connected with the campaign directly, then it's that link with the PM.
Exactly, and then you can see that it's not just a lucky guess, or they've people might pick up a rumour. That would be a bit less scandalous. But if they're so closely connected to the PM, you think they must have some kind of information that other people don't, that other people are not privy to. And it's interesting, so many bets were placed around this time that there was a noticeable spike. So the Financial Times has looked at the fact that, several £1,000s were placed on a certain day for this July election. And in fact, even, this was so noticeable, one person that noticed it at the time was Morgan McSweeney, Labour's campaign director. So that gave him a little hint that the election was going to take place in July. So it's everything about this scandal, has gone wrong for them.
I was just going to say, within all of this, there's all this scrutiny, because obviously we're talking about the scandal for the Tories, we're talking about the Jeremy Corbyn issue for Keir Starmer and what have you. But there's not much criticism, if you like, of what Reform is doing. Now, is that because they're not getting the attention in the main media?
Yeah, that could be. I think,
because we've got to look at it, whether you like the plans or not. They need to be examined.
I think what the criticism we are seeing is of various candidates who maybe haven't been vetted properly. There's another story came out about a candidate who's been making racist comments, for instance, about Diane Abbott. Recently, we had the candidate who said that we should have appeased Hitler in World War II. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing him badly, but that's that was the kind of gist of it. So there's been some of that. I mean, there's been some criticism of the manifesto, or not manifesto, we're not supposed to call it that. But,
no, the contracts
with the people. People's contract, yeah.
But you're right. I mean, they're not getting the same amount. They're not, certainly in the mainstream media, they're not getting the attention that you'd think their poll ratings would warrant. And attention isn't just positive, as you say. They need to be scrutinised as well. Every party needs that.
Yeah.
What do you think about the scrutiny on Sir Keir Starmer last night? Because I thought there were 2 things that were quite interesting. First is the delay to BAT on private schools till 2025. There's talk of it happening in the spring term, which would mean that some parents may be forced to pull out their students in the middle of exam season, which does seem quite strange. And then the NHS waiting list admitting last night that it could take till the end of the first term, if they're going for a second, to even make headway on bringing those down.
It was interesting. I mean, he tried to frame that as a kind of positive. He said, I'm not going to give you sort of false promises. But it was a reminder, actually, that, the Labour Party actually isn't promising very much that's different. There isn't really going to be a lot of actual change on the ground in terms of public services after this election, despite change being the kind of watchword of Labour's policy. Whenever you look at what is being offered, it's incredibly thin. It's very, very similar to what the Conservatives are offering.
Yeah. Within all of this, I'll tell you what has really struck me in this campaign is that we seem to be working, more than anything else, we seem to be working not on any hard facts, nothing in black and white. It's all speculation. Are they going to put taxes up? Are you going to put taxes up? It's literally everything is up for grabs in all of this, and it's just a case of people saying, well, what do I really believe in? Yeah,
you're right. It seems as if we're hearing more about, say, Labour's potential policies from the Tories and vice versa. We hear about Labour's, potential tax bombshell on savers. I mean, they've announced no such thing. Labour say the Tories are going to essentially, abolish all taxes and therefore your pension, which is, again, also nonsense. Kind of a lot of mudslinging, but not enough clarity. I think one problem is that essentially because neither leader really has much vision, I think there's quite a big void, and that can be filled with speculation.
Yeah.
We don't really know where they stand on the big issues. They don't really stand for big principles. So you're just sort of left wondering, what are they going to, which tax rate are they going to tinker with?
Yeah, OK. Fraser, thanks.